Welcome to the Honest Man Podcast, a discussion among men of various perspectives on subjects from the taboo to the typical. This is episode 2. All right, guys, have you been watching anything new, streaming anything?
Oh, always, always. I did Stranger Things, caught up on that with the season finale coming out, and I'm not going to do any spoilers because some people listening might not have seen it yet, but it has some pretty epic moments, especially in the finale.
So you're not talking about the half point. I know they did like a break between
Oh
the
no, I
two, which
watched
was
all of it.
new. Okay.
Hmm. Yeah.
All right. I have not gotten to the last 2 seasons. I need to catch
Oh,
up
you're
on that.
behind. You're behind.
Yes.
I just started watching Stranger Things. Season 1, I just began watching the first season of Stranger Things.
You got some catching up to do.
I've got a lot of catching up to do.
Oh,
man.
I've heard some spoilers already, so I'm a little upset, but we're gonna get through this.
Oh yeah.
I won't mention anything for anyone out there that hasn't seen it, but we lost a good one.
How? What?
Uh,
How? You don't know that?
And I'm the one that spoiled it, so that's why I'm laughing. But
We
I
had
have not.
some pre-podcast stuff going on. We're still recovering from it, but it's just gonna make this one all that much better.
Yeah, the only thing I've watched is Bob's Burgers. Made my wife watch that on a perpetual cycle. As soon as we finish all of the seasons, we just start back over. But I started watching the Terminal List today. Watched several episodes. It's pretty all right.
nice, nice.
Don't typically watch TV, but I had a very active day, and I got very tired, and I just wanted to lay on the couch. So
Hey, nothing
Never
wrong with
seen,
that.
never seen
Hey,
Bob's
treat
Burgers.
yourself.
You've never seen Bob's Burgers?
Never seen Bob's Burgers.
oh, come on.
Wow.
Highly recommend.
It took me a while to get into it. Wifey's a big fan of the show, and there's a movie I guess that just came out, and I know she's gonna want to see that. So
Yeah, I have not seen it. We should make a thing out of it.
there you go. All right, so today's topic we are going to be talking about goals and drive. How are you guys feeling about goals and drive?
I feel like it would be a good conversation, honestly.
I have had a lot of goals over the years. The drive to do them has waned at times, I would say, and we'll definitely get into that. But that's how I feel just upfront. I'm like, I set a lot of goals. I'm very oriented, very progress oriented, but actually achieving them, it's a hit or miss.
I'm on the low end of both of those, so this one's gonna be a learning experience for me.
Hey, nothing wrong with that, man.
Yeah,
Gotta
and
start
I
somewhere.
would say like I've always been like Steven goal oriented. Like I like to set a lot of goals, and I've got better over time at achieving them. The way I set them and the way I go about them has changed. So I don't know. I'm excited to talk about it and also see how everyone else has managed that over their lives.
Yeah, I would say for me, goals are, I guess, kind of. I've never really defined them. I've just kind of gone about my way and see how things work out. But
Everything being like internalized, like you just kind of
yeah,
like within yourself are like, oh, I'd like to do that, and then
yeah. But I've changed that process here recently, the last couple of years. So yeah, very very excited about that.
there's a lot of different ways that people set goals, and and we'll probably talk about some of the systems and how we individually do it. But there's actual research on it too, which is pretty interesting at how like certain ways you do it actually make you more likely to like achieve those goals. Like there's legitimate correlation between like the methods used and the success rate, which is kind of crazy when you
Yeah.
think about it. Just that like you could know that you want this thing, but the way that you gauge it, the way that you set it up, the way that you word it can actually impact that. And that's just like the
No,
crazy
I'm
intricacies of us.
I'm actually kind of interested in that because like I haven't my way of doing things has always been very I guess minimalist. Like I'm not a big like write things down. I just kind of get something in my head that I want to do, and like some things I work for it and achieve them. Like you said, sometimes that drive wanes and it all kind of falls to the wayside. Maybe you pick it up later, maybe you don't. But
What's funny to me about you saying I've always been a minimalist, and then you're so like writing pen and paper is like that's too much. Like normally that's the minimalist.
Yeah.
They're like,
yeah, I get what you're saying.
I do it on pen and paper. Like too much, too much. I'm a minimalist.
No, I mean like literally
Keep it
to the point where,
inside.
like,
Keep it
I
inside.
just think it in my head, and then I'm like, all right, I mentally have made a note. I want to achieve that thing. I have no. I'm telling a little bit of fib. I have a list of like I think I set yearly goals, and I started this in like 2018, and it's been the same two goals since then. And I just update the year because I haven't achieved either of them, which was get something published, like writing wise, and lose 30 pounds. I think it was. Yeah, you know what? Here's hoping,
So
year 4 we can do it.
we can get into that, but so technically, and I'd have to think about it a little bit more. I think those are bad goals
Oh yeah, I don't think they're
because
great.
you can't control if somebody publishes your work or not. That's something that I learned with goals, right? And so this is kind of gonna jump into the weeds of it. I used to always set a goal like I want to get to 50 viewers on average streaming on Twitch, right? That's not a good goal. I can't control if 50 people watch me. That is setting a goal that is on other people making a decision, making a choice. The goal
All
should
right.
be produce great content, go live X number of days. So you break down how you could get to 50 and you make all the steps that you can take the goals for that. Because then if you do them all and you don't get to 50, you still achieved all your goals. You still accomplished something. Your content got better. Your schedule got better. You're all, that sort of thing. Whereas if you just say,
Makes
I want
sense.
this, that's not in your control. You can't control if somebody publishes you, but you could say, I want to write 10 pages I'm proud of. I want to write a short story. I want to write at least 7 times across 3 months. Like those are goals that you can have an impact on. You can't make
Makes
people
sense.
read it. That's like our podcast. If we said, oh, we want to get 100,000 views, well, we can't. Like, that's not a great goal for us. It's something we can want, but goal wise, it would be produce really good podcast, get great engagement, or, that's a bad one too, because we're off other people. But you get what I'm saying, right?
I get
Like,
it. No, it makes
yeah,
sense. I mean, it's things that you have to set it up to be things that you can control and act on. It's
yep,
actionable goals for yourself, not
hmm
that rely on other people. That makes
yep.
sense. It's a good point.
That's something that I learned and I
Look,
try
we're
to
already
like keep in
learning.
mind with goals that I set is don't say something that you can't do. And most people do that, right? Most people do. You see
Oh
tons
yeah,
of
for
stuff
sure.
where it's like I want X number of followers or I want this or I want to get to 50 reviews on the podcast, whatever it is. So you can't do that.
And that's a big part of having a good drive and motivation when you're doing anything is knowing why you want to do something.
Hmm.
And like you said, choosing something that you have control over. And that is the biggest part I think of getting started, knowing what you can control and then taking those steps to get that itemized and to
Hmm.
meet your goals.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Picking
Doing
something actionable and then
yes.
finding the actions to get there.
Yeah, and the things that are within your control. So I'm gonna use the example of like we want 50 reviews on the podcast, right? We want that. We can't make people do it, but what we can control is we're gonna give at least one call to action for people to go check out and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube in our shows. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? And
You
that
can
is a
find
goal we
links
can
to all
set.
these places at BeHonestMan.com. It's a
Yeah.
website with all of
Exactly.
our links.
Look at that,
Bam.
boys. Goal
Look at
achieved.
that. Look at
We
that. We,
checked that
we
off real
nailed
quick.
it. We have to do that once per show, every show. That's a goal that we can make. So we can't control the 50 people, but we can control our efforts to get those 50 people to do the thing that we want. So with any goals that we come up with, it's a lot of it applies to that. What's in your control.
Yeah, so I think for me, the drive, the motivation, that's the hard part. I can set my own goals, but getting myself to them for me, for personally, that's what ties me up, and it's something that I've talked about with my wife a lot more recently as well. I grew up as like I was a pretty spoiled kid. I was the youngest, and I was the only one that lived at home, and I was in the quote unquote gifted program at school, and
Oof.
What a mistake
yeah, I know, right? It's crazy. Honestly, I think that was the worst decision that my parents ever made for me was letting me do any of that stuff because it kind of, how do I say this?
Does it kind of insulate you a little bit?
It changed the way I thought about myself.
Huh.
I would go into everything assuming that I would jump right into it, I could learn it quick right off the bat, I'd be good at it, and I could just
Mm-hmm.
move on. Which I did up until I got into high school, and then I started running into things where I couldn't just pick it up immediately, and I wasn't immediately good at everything that I did. And then that just never changed from there. And then now into my adult life, talk to my wife about it. She tells me all the time, I know you can do these things, but you're not trying. And the reason you're not trying is because you're scared to fail.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is a very key phrase right there, my friend.
Yeah.
Very key.
Exactly. I mean, what you just said is exactly that. Like you had everything where you just showed up. Showing up, you got it done. no problem. You show up, you're good. Success. Soon as you hit the first wall of discomfort, the first wall of like, oh, this isn't just kind of like a freebie, you're like, nope, nope, I'm
Yeah.
good.
So when you
And
come up against that hard work and you got to take that next step and realize, you know what? Yeah, I'm not instantly good at this thing. It's going to take a lot of hard work. That's kind of where you draw that line. And also when you see failure, coming up to failure can be extremely discouraging and discourage you if you want to put in any work in the future on any other, goals and projects.
I
yep,
think the example that I have, and I mean, you guys are familiar with this, is well, maybe Andy's not, I don't know, is that I, for most of my life, was overweight. I was lazy. I was your stereotypical gamer dude from the 90s and early 2000s. Stayed up late every night, slept all day if I could, barely graduated high school, the whole nine. And then I played soccer throughout high school and I would slim down a little bit, but then I put the weight back on and all that jazz. And at 5'8", I was over 200 pounds, 210 pounds, stuff like that. And I just always told myself, I will just wake up one day and I'll be skinnier. This is like baby weight. I'm just gonna lose it as I go. And soon as it clicked in my head that that's not how that works, and I actually realized that like no, you have to work to make things happen, is where like it just clicked for me. And when I started to work out and I saw the weight loss, next thing you know, I started to turn everything around with like my schooling, which I had failed out of college. They literally kicked me out. I had to appeal to get back in because I was doing the same thing. I'd go to college, and as soon as it would be any sort of level of difficult, I would just stop going. If I went in and it didn't come to me easily, I just quit. And as soon as I realized that effort leads to results, and sometimes that effort can be small and you can still get a great result, and sometimes it can be monumental and that result feels all that much better, is when it just like clicked for me and I started to just be more active and more go getting about stuff where I'd be like, I want to get that done. Let me go do the work to do it. With this podcast, for instance, I've been grinding for 2 weeks on different stuff we can do because my mind is set on it. And it's realizing that the only way anything gets done is to actually put in effort to achieve that thing. And that's what you have to click in your head, Chris. It's just like, I want those things. Yes, it's going to be uncomfortable. No, I'm not good at it right now, but I can be. I have to make that decision because no matter how many times your wife tells you that, no matter how many times Mika tells you that, until you decide, it will do nothing. It will do absolutely nothing. She can tell you every day for the rest of your life, but she doesn't get to speak it into existence. You have to act it into existence.
Yeah. You just have to make that decision in your head, like, I'm going to do the thing. That's kind of how I've gotten to this point, going through. I went from like literally being. So a little backstory. I was with the woman who would become my wife. I was working odd jobs, worked on farms and things throughout South Carolina for not a lot of money. I was staying in a house that wasn't necessarily livable, wasn't finished, didn't have finished floors and walls and things like that. There was one livable room. Wasn't really doing a lot. I was like, kind of lazy. Was Didn't really have anything I was trying to do. Tried to join the military. Got denied because of mental health history. Felt very defeated. Still, felt like I wanted to find something to do. And I got into the idea of volunteering as a firefighter, just kind of out of the blue. It still gives me the ability to serve. I had this desire to do stuff, but again, like every time it came up to doing hard work, it's just like, well, this is hard. I'm not going to keep pushing into this. But you get to a point where like you realize that if you just push past that initial discomfort, yeah, it still sucks. Like going through the fire academy is not a fun thing, not in the summer in South Carolina. And then getting through that, spending years with that department, getting promoted to a senior firefighter position, leaving, joining another department where you're now the lowest man on the totem pole. And day one, they know because you have experience, they're going to treat you worse than everybody else. That's tough. Mentally, that's tough. But you just got to realize, like, yeah, this sucks. But if I just keep doing it, I'll get through it and I'll be where I want to be. And it's that mental, you got, and that's kind of where I learned that is like, if you just kind of say, I know where I want to be, I especially when it's easy like that. You have a clear defined path. Just don't flunk out, right? Just don't give up. That's what they're trying to get you to do in anything like a boot camp or selection process or academy is that they're obviously trying to teach you some things along the way, but mostly it's just to see if you'll give up or not.
Yeah.
And when you learn that resiliency, like I have a thing I want to do, I have a clear path. All I got to do is just stick to it. no matter how much it sucks, that's just the way it is, and you'll get there eventually. So, not everything's that easy. Obviously, there's much more complex goals to have, but
Yeah.
Yeah, I get it. When you break it down to its core,
Yeah.
that's what you're trying to get at.
Yeah, so I know for me, dealing with like art, if you're on video, you'll see there's a painting behind me. This is supposed to be a gift from my parents. It's actually a painting of a trip I took with my wife, and we went to Scotland, Ireland, the UK, and the painting got hard to a certain point. And I'm familiar with paint, no expert in it. My expertise is drawing, and painting got difficult. I got to some parts where I was like, I don't know how I'm going to interpret this, and this painting has sat back there for quite a while at an unfinished point because I have got to that point where it got hard. It got questionable. Didn't know how I was going to proceed, so I kind of left it alone. But when it comes to all these things we've all been discussing about the different things we kind of stopped at or made realizations, I think the big part of that is the why.
Hmm.
What is your
okay.
real core motivation? What's making you do these things? And I think once you find out what those are, they'll help get you going a little bit better.
Yeah,
Yeah, for
and
sure.
that goes to the drive part of it. Your drive is your why, right? And so I learned this at one point because I used to every time I wanted to like really get into a good workout or whatever, I'd watch motivational stuff or I listened to a motivational speech, and I got real big on motivation. But motivation is fleeting. Motivation is a temporary sort of thing, whereas discipline, for instance, which is something I think we want to talk about in depth in another episode, discipline is actually what you build. Motivation can be the spark, but you got to keep fanning that with the discipline. That's basically it. Can light that fire initially, but then it's just a matter of you have to keep deciding to do something. And that's that why you're talking about is the drive kicks in. The drive isn't just the motivation, it's like the thing between the discipline and the motivation. When you don't have the motivation, the drive gets you there long enough to build the discipline, and then you go from there because you have to tell yourself why am I doing this? What is the long-term goal? What is the thing that I am doing this for, you know? And so drive and that why is super important with everything. But sometimes here's my problem with the why. This is a bit of a tangent. It's not everything has some monumental why. Not everything does. Like, people
Yeah.
say certain things. For instance, like you maybe want to get healthier. Your big why could be family, having a child, wanting to, that's a big why. For other people's, like they don't have something like that for every situation. Like, why do I want to grow my stream? Because I want to grow my stream because I want to be popular and make a living off of it. That's not a big enough why to me. And maybe I'm framing it incorrectly and whatever it might be, but the tough part with why is that like not everything has one that is so powerful that it
Yeah.
pushes you through.
Well,
That
yeah,
is also true.
it's you the why and the motivation thing tying together is I think is a big point of what you said. Like if the why's not big enough, how strong will that motivation be all the time?
Hmm.
Like if my motivation for doing things is like, well, I want to buy a nice watch. It's like, well, why? Because it's nice. It'll
Yeah.
make me feel good, But like, I think that you're 100% right. Motivation is waning. Discipline is important. But the thing that I have found has helped me a lot along like this whole process as I've grown is you don't have to achieve everything. So like being able to go through these different goals or things you want to achieve in life or whatever, whether it's like, oh, I want a house and I want a car and I want to have a nice this or a nice that, I want to be able to do this in life, I want to take trips, I want to make this much money, like all of those are very standard generic things that we were all kind of told at some point that is important. But one thing I've realized is that I'm the person who gets to decide what's important to me, and it helps a lot. Not goals are important, discipline is important, but honing that in, narrowing that gate of what is allowed through to be important. So there's some things that like, yeah, I want to do this thing, but like it's not important to me. It's not important enough that it would go in front of these other things. And it's not, or something say that's important to like in general to society, maybe like having a savings account. Not a big priority for me, as that's my only flaw. But my wife, she's big on savings account stuff. But like people always like at work, it's like, oh, you got to invest your money to do these things. I'm like, no, that makes sense, 100%. But it is not important to me in any way. It is a worthy goal, and it's one that I've had at certain points in my life until I realized like I don't want to put the effort into that thing. There's no desire whatsoever. And if you don't have that desire, even if it's something that's important, you won't have the discipline.
I think the end goal for all of us with any of these goals or aspirations that we may have, the end goal is happiness. All
Yeah,
right. So
yeah,
it's
that's
whatever
fair.
makes you happy, whatever gets you, you know, everybody's working to get through life. You need roof and you need shelter, you need food and that kind of thing. But the things that make us happy are the things that are outside of that. And those are things you're trying to reach. And yeah, so happiness, I think, is the end goal for everybody in life. And you kind of set your goals based on that. What makes you happy? What do you want to do? So
Ideally, yeah, I would say that's something that I think everybody should step back and look at when they're setting goals is, does this lead to greater happiness, or is this just some random accomplishment that I'm not actually going to feel all that much better about? I
Yeah, and I
think
think
that is important.
that's a much better way of putting what I was trying to figure out the way to put that. But no, that's exactly right. It's like there's a difference between things that you want to do to achieve like personal happiness and things that you just feel like, okay, I need to achieve these things. And
Mhm.
those you have to have like a tiered system there. You have to narrow the gate and decide what's important and what's not.
so do you guys think that goals are important?
Yes,
I think
in a general
unless
sense.
yeah, I think having things that you're going for, but I'm a person who's very big on progress. I like to progress in everything. My downfall is not setting goals and going for them. It is when they go in the opposite direction. Anybody who's watched my stream is familiar knows that every time my stream takes a hit, I go down. Like I can't. I think about it all the time. I over analyze the analytics. I go like full into a rabbit hole because I work hard and I will put in hours and hours and I try to create extra content. And then the second it goes backwards is where I tend to stumble. But that's where you're supposed to have that grit and that discipline to keep going
Yeah.
or to improve. Right. And so, nobody's perfect. As good as I am at starting upon things and sometimes pushing through, I often let them get to me for sure.
Yeah, I think that is very key. Like you were saying, setting the little small stepping stones that help get you to where you want to be. Because with each one of those little stepping stones, you do gain a little bit of confidence and it reassures you.
Yeah.
Like you were saying earlier too, with the goals that are outside of your reach or that you can't directly impact, that's
Mhm.
where we really have to watch it and kind of refocus our goals to what we can actually action on.
Yeah, because then you think you failed, right? Like if you set a goal to get a certain thing. So we'll go back to the same example 50 reviews on our podcast and we don't get it. We shouldn't feel like we failed that goal. We can feel like we failed if we didn't do the call to actions, if we didn't tell
Mm.
people, if we that we can fail at. We can't fail at 50 random individuals out there who are lovely people leaving reviews because we can't control that. So I think that kind of goes to your point that picking the ones that we can control because otherwise they will hit us and they will hurt us when we look at them. Oh, we didn't achieve that thing that actually had nothing to do with us achieving a thing. It was just this random product that we couldn't actually directly influence or directly create. We can influence it, but we couldn't create it ourselves. So
Yeah.
Exactly.
yeah.
And I think Indy kind of touched on this at the beginning of what he was talking about there with like these stepping stones. One thing I think a lot of people fall in the trap of with goal setting, and I know I've done it, is setting very grandiose goals. Like I want to lose X amount of weight, or like I just want to lose weight. Like that's a just a big general goal that doesn't really have a measure of progress, right? But if you say I want to lose 5 pounds in over 3 months, that's something you can measure. You can have progress. That you can have these stepping stone, these little mini goals along the way. And that kind of if you could break down almost any goal like that. And if you can't break it down into progressible steps, then you need to figure out another way to think about it. Because if it's too big, it's going to seem too difficult to achieve. At some point, you're going to hit that wall. And if it's little steps you can take, if you've hit a wall and you've lost that motivation, a little step is real easy to get back
Yeah.
on the wagon, to
And
keep
it gives
going.
you a little kick. That's the other thing is sometimes when you achieve that tiny goal, it gives you that little bit more of a spark
Yeah.
that goes because we build that thing in our head, and this can get really scientific with like dopamine and things like that. We achieve goals, we get a dopamine hit, and then that can urge us forward to start to pursue the next one and the next one and the next one. And that builds this chain of always trying to accomplish something and always trying to build up something so that way you can get that feeling again. And that actually pushes you towards your goal, is having little goals that you're trying to hit. Because every time you hit one, it feels good. Every time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I know we've talked a lot on kind of like this general, I don't know, subject of goals and like outlining how, defining it and how we set them and, ways to kind of work towards that, some of the pitfalls. I'd be interested in having some conversation about like our individual goals. How, the things that are, I'd just be interested to see the things that are important to you guys and how you plan to achieve them, how that's changed over your life. Like, as far as what is important, what is kind of, high on your tier list, what was low, how that's changed. So,
And I can tell you that the older I've gotten, the more my goals have changed, and I guess that comes with experience and seeing the world and knowing what is out there. But when I first started trying to get out there, like I said, support myself, that has now changed to having a child with my wife. Never thought I wanted kids. Met the right person. I know they always say it, it's very cliche. Working on that, no, working on that now. That has led me to thinking about better taking care of my family with an additional mouth to feed. So that has led me to career. I've worked the same job for 20 years, grown, got up to salary management, enjoying it. Now I want more. So looking at how to achieve that has now become my focus. Looking at going into IT and getting some certifications. So setting those small little goals now is where I'm at to start achieving that.
When
yeah.
it comes to that, so, and maybe this will take us down a path where we're not each individually doing it yet, or how are you doing it? Where you said you're setting mini goals, like what's your current system or tactic? Like, are you writing them all down? Or are you like, what are you doing currently?
So I do have a little book that I do have my goals and tasks written down in. That is one of the things that I talked about in the beginning, where things have changed. I used to internalize a lot of it. That didn't really get me very far. I would keep it inside. There was nothing visible, and I'm a very
Hmm.
visual person. Having that visual thing to look at every day gets me motivated. So, looking at taking IT classes and courses, I did take one already. I did not pass my first certification. Goes back to that part of hitting that wall, getting
Yeah.
that first little step back, took a pause. So, looking at getting back into that and going back into that course again to go back and get that certification and get my next certification. So there's multiple certifications I'll have to get to the end goal, but starting with the simple one, going back and getting that certification and succeeding to get
Yeah.
that first little dopamine hit, and
Hmm.
then moving
Mhm.
Well,
on to the next.
I think so. There's two main points I want to share with that one. Is one, kudos for being like, I'm going to go back and get it, because if you think that you have to get something right the first time every time, you will never achieve things if it doesn't work the first time, because you think, oh, well,
Yes.
I didn't get it, so whatever. No, you can fail. That is not a test that, or a certification that you can never try again. So why treat it like it is? You can literally go back, study again, make your, corrections for your mistakes, and then succeed. The second thing is, and one of the reasons I asked about your system is because we do have in our notes here that there was a study from 2015 by psychologist Gail Matthews that showed that when people write down their goals, they were 33% more successful in achieving them than those who just did it in their head. So, like, when
Let me
you in
find
your
some pen
head
and
are
paper.
just like, hey, this is what I want to do, just know that you're leaving a 33% increase in the likelihood that you'll achieve that goal by just not writing it down.
And
Chris,
that
you,
can
you
also
got a
go
pen and
with
paper out?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm looking.
Pen and
so
paper,
that can
people, pen
also
and
go
paper.
with like your work as well. You have little mini tasks. Like I said, the tasks don't have to be so grandiose as I want to change the world. I want to, create a cure for something. It could be I want to get this email sent out, make sure I get this done. A
Hmm.
small task, a small goal that is actionable towards a larger thing. So, hey, you want to get that next raise or get noticed by the boss or do those types of things? Hey, I sent that email out. Check that off the list. Being able to cross things off a list, so satisfying. It is
Hmm.
so
Yeah.
great
And
feeling.
it builds a good
It
habit.
exactly. So one of the things I started doing with my journal, it's a little bulletin journal. Go in every day, write down my tasks for the day. I have this to do, I have this to do, I have this to do. Get it all listed out so I can start organizing my day, And you can do that same thing with your life. Start organizing your life. These are the
Hmm.
small little things I need to do. Cross them off the list, down to the next thing, and you're one step closer to your goal.
And I don't want to jump in front of anybody, but a lot of what he said are things that I kind of want to build off of or also break off of. So as far as myself, I think working back from the most recent thing you said, the notepad or bullet points, writing down the things you want to do for the day is something that I try to do. I have a little app in my phone. Can't remember the name of it right now, but it allows you to kind of have this list of things and it just takes one swipe to check it off, and I've stuff that's important that I need to get done, I'll put on there. It's kind of like a to-do list. And then my calendar links with that and I can kind of sync those things. So if I look at the calendar, it's showing me the to-do list, which then reminds me to do those things. Does it work all the time? No. But it is helpful. We use this whole breaking task down and kind of putting them in a list or an order is something it's kind of how our day functions and the fire service. So we always know the things we have to get done. We get there in the morning, we have to, check off our equipment, make sure it's ready for the day. That's our personal equipment and the station equipment, the apparatus and all that. Clean the station. And then after that, it's kind of up to a couple of different things. So like training, if we have training we want to get done or training that's assigned or somewhere we have to do, that falls in. We have to figure out when and where and how we're going to accomplish that. The same applies to really anything. Like if we have, PR events and all these things, like I have like in the role I'm in now where I'm coming into this acting officer position, which I'll get on a little bit here in a second, I have to look at everything that has to get done in the day and get it done. That's one of the tests for lieutenant is they give you what's called an in basket, and it's like 20 different tasks. And it's like, all right, you have 5 minutes. Put these in the order of importance and how you're going to achieve them. Well, that seems pretty easy, right? Like you have your personnel issues, things like that, and all that. Well, then they put stuff that contradicts. Like you have a meeting with the chief, but you also have a PR event at the same time. What takes precedence? How do you manage that? Can you split the crew? Can you do these things? So like that organization, just in general, that way to break down tasks, like you were saying, is important. The other thing that you were talking about is like failing at that first attempt, right? And instead of giving up, coming back to it later, giving it another shot. You probably learned things from that and were able to
For sure.
apply, that to the next process. I'm going through two different processes right now. So I'm going through a process to become a tactical medic attached to the SWAT team and a lieutenant's promotional process. The tactical medics thing is something I don't have a ton of experiences. Obviously, I live in a city that has a significant amount of gun violence and other things like that. So I have a lot of trauma experience with things like that. But as far as combat experience, I don't really have any. So I'm kind of, limited in a way when I'm applying for this position. But by doing it, I can figure out where I'm lacking and what I can do to fix that for the next time I apply. And the same thing for the lieutenant's process. I don't necessarily want to be a lieutenant right now, but I want to know where I'm lacking so that when I do decide to do that, I can fix that. I can
And
have
that's
already
you're
applied
approaching it
changes.
as it being a method of learning. Like
Yeah.
that's essentially it. Like you're using it as a learning experience. And when you approach things in that way, it allows you to fail at them so long as you are paying attention to the process that you used prior, right? Like what are the
Yeah.
things that I'm doing this first time? How can I fix this?
Learn
And
from your failures, learn from
yeah,
your mistakes,
exactly.
learn from where whatever you fall short. But yeah, that's kind of how I've been working through a couple of goals here recently. A lot of I do essentially the same thing that we talked about earlier with other things is try to take these small progressive steps when it applies to general stuff. But I just thought those two things really kind of highlighted what Indy was talking. It's like, being able to essentially you're able to fail and learn
Yeah.
and just keep pushing on. You've got a path in front of you. You see where you want to be. Just stay on the path.
Chris, have you tried like any specific method or right? Has it mostly just been in your head going, "Oh, I'd like to achieve that thing," and then just not going for it, or like what would you say currently are like the big flaws in your approach if you're trying to achieve things?
I mean, so it's I've definitely just been keeping track of everything in my head. So I've been trying to use all this time to just kind of take in what you guys are saying because I know that this is stuff that I can apply to myself, to my life, because I know I know I need to change and things need to change to reach my end goal, and it's the same as everyone else's. I just want to be happy, healthy. I want to be comfortable.
We're leaving 33% on the table by not writing it down, man. Come
Yeah,
on.
obviously. So I'm gonna say, and I'm writing it down on my hand. And it's just, it's tough. It's tough for me, and I realize that. I know it's all in my head. So it's just trying to take everything that you guys have been talking about. Trying to set my own goals, trying to set small goals. Writing it down. If that's what's working for you guys, and maybe that'll work for me. Yeah, this is kind of a tough topic for me because I don't have much to say about it. I just I have like this weird warped sense with priorities in my head, and it's hard for me to balance things out.
Do you think that so I said earlier on one hand that the only way that you can make things happen is you have to make it happen yourself, right? But do you think that you're better at being, I don't, maybe this is bad terminology, at being a follower? Like if somebody tells you what to do and how, like, go do this thing, that's more likely. But if you have to take it into your own hands and just go do that thing, that's just not going to happen. Or
Okay, so that's the fun part. Doesn't work either way. Someone could tell me step by step, how I can achieve this goal, this way. This is the easiest way to get from point A to point B. Like, yeah, I'll think about it.
yeah,
Then I'll try to tell myself, this is my easiest way to get from point A to point B. Maybe next week.
I can tell you,
Procrastination.
procrastination is a thing, and having a certain there's a comfort zone that we all have. We don't want to step out. It's weird. It's cold. It's scary out there, and we don't know. It's an unknown, and we all fear the unknown in some aspects or another, whether it be the dark or applying for a new job that you don't think you might get, or in my instance, going for a certification that I may or may not pass. That is the hardest part of getting your goals going is stepping out of that comfort zone. For me, like I said, I've been at the same job for the major my adult life, and it took me a while to go back for that certification or to start that process again because I am scared of the unknown. I know my job. I know the job in and out backwards to know everybody that works there. So coming out into a whole new field, a whole new area where I will be starting, like you said, from ground zero. That's a big scary thing, and that's kind of like maybe I can stay where I am. So I'm having that internal battle right now of pushing myself back to go for that certification and be like, hey, you've got to get through this. Push through this wall. You can do it. It's gonna be scary, but the pay will be worth it in the end.
Yeah,
it's
in
So
the
it's
in the quality of life, right? That's kind of what we're looking at when we're trying to
yeah.
achieve these things. This is an improvement of the quality of life.
Yeah, it's get that comfort. That thing you said about comfort is really, really important because that's where we sit, and that's where that being uncomfortable is that awkward spot that we don't want to be in, and we resist it. And sometimes it's not actively choosing to do that internally, like in our own heads, we are like unconsciously we hate the idea of being uncomfortable. It's
Yes.
literally it's a fight or flight response, like that's uncomfortable, I don't want to deal with that. So the key is that you have to be able to recognize when it is just that, and it is just this might be a little awkward or a little uncomfortable, but it's not a major uncomfort because a lot of these things aren't. They're not like
Yeah.
it's not the end of the world. It's actually minimal impact. The number of things
Oh
that we
yes.
worry about that are minimal impact that we treat and we approach as if it's going to be this life shattering event, and it's just like, wait a second. If I just separate and recognize, yes, it's uncomfortable. Yes, I might not achieve it. I might fail at it, but I'm going to be in the same spot I am right now, and I can just try again, or I can approach it differently, or I can go try to achieve something else if I realize this wasn't for me. That's
Yeah.
another thing is you're not stuck to the path that you decide. I want to set this goal. You get halfway through and you decide, maybe this isn't actually what I want. And as long as you know that and you believe that, you can adjust that goal and you can do something else with it. So, I mean, it
Yeah.
is. There's just so many different things to think about when it comes to goals and how you go for them. I mean, it's a lot more complicated, I think, and yet not at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah. I started to like I said, the last couple of years, I say the last 5 to 10 years is when I started being more goal oriented. I was just kind of drifting through life, and that's one of the things with young men is that we do mature later than ladies. My wife is younger than me, but she is very driven, very motivated. So having a partner to bounce that off of is always very good. Having a good motivational network, very key to successful goals or reaching your goals. When I first started trying to become a manager, I didn't really want to. I had a couple of managers approach me, "Hey, you should apply. I think you'd be really great for it. You know what you're doing. You know the ins and outs. Just go for it." I didn't want the responsibility. I was fearful of change. So I put it off for the longest time. And I finally had one manager who was kind of like a mentor to me, tell me, "Hey, just do it. I'll be on the panel for interview. We got this. You can do this. I will be here with you. Don't underestimate yourself. Don't sell yourself short." And I'm glad I did. And I think hindsight is 2020 with all of those things.
Yeah.
You realize, like you said, it wasn't that bad. It wasn't that scary. I've been doing it now for about 6 years. No big deal.
Yeah.
And I wish I would have done it sooner.
Something when you said that about like your wife being driven and all that is I realized that all three of you are dating, like, are married. I'm sorry, not dating. You're literally married to women who are kind of go getters. So, like,
Oh
Yes.
hell yeah.
they're all
Yes.
smart. They're all like driven. They make stuff
Yes.
happen. They're
Yes.
like, they're all strong women. Like, if y'all weren't there, they'd be fine. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Like,
Like we
Yes.
cavemen in here, we lucked out.
Oh yeah. My wife is also very physically strong. She carries me around all the time.
that's what I'm saying. Like, you got like legit. I was just thinking about it. As soon as you said that, I was like, wait, Chris? Yeah, okay. Sean? Yeah. Oh wow. Like, you got, jeez.
Yeah. So my
We
wife,
lucked
at
out.
the same time, she was a manager at her job, and now she's helping run, I think 6 urgent cares, doing a boss job.
Mm-hmm.
She's doing great. I know Sean, your wife's out there doing her thing, educated,
We need to get
very
them on
powerful.
Be honest, girls, or be honest,
Yes.
ladies,
Yeah, for
or
real.
something like that, dude.
The potential
I,
outcast.
I think for our sakes, we don't want that.
Yeah, probably not. Actually, I'm cutting it. I'm cutting it.
So when I was looking at this topic of goals, I was looking at one of the little tidbits I saw that's very interesting was the education gap between men and women.
Mhm.
Uh, Women just graduate with a lot more than men, and I don't know if, like I said, it's that maturity level, but a college degree for women, 60% of them, 60% of bachelor's degrees are held by women, 60% of master's degrees held by women, 50% of medical and law degrees are held by women. That says a lot.
Get
Yeah.
it together, boys. Come on.
Yes.
My
yes.
head wants to say it's because we have always been told, or we have this ingrained in us to go do more physical manual things. But at the same
Yes.
time, it's not like women have had. I'm trying to think of, on the flip side, women in getting higher education and being able to do all of these sorts of things is relatively new in the big picture.
Yes.
So when you compare, you're like, well, no, that's not a super great argument, I guess, unless all the dudes who are going to school before were still just kind of like, well, we're here, we're doing it, there's nobody to compare us to, so we rock. But then women started to pursue higher education more frequently and go for these types of jobs and degrees, and then they started putting all the guys to shame.
Yes.
Dudes are like, never mind, I'm not going to school no more.
Yeah, they're
Yeah.
like, well, never, yeah, I'm gonna go do this other thing. So
Yeah. You talking about the manager thing, it reminds me of a lot of the situation I'm going through right now. So putting in for the lieutenant's process again, I said I wanted to know and learn and stuff like that. My lieutenant actually is like, no, like in battalion chief and other people like that I work with in my crew are just like, oh no, serious, like go do it. Like if you get it, take it. And I'm like, oh, I don't want to do that. I'm not ready for that. And they're like, what do you mean? Of course you're ready for it. Like the same position, right? Where you're like, oh no, I could never do that. Like I'm not of the maturity or the organizational skills or just the whatever to do that. And everyone else around you is telling you you absolutely are. And it's kind of tough to see that sometimes
we're our
until you
toughest
do
critic.
it. Oh yeah. And but it kind of also goes in like there's different motivations that can come up. So beyond that, and wanting to learn from the process, that's my own personal motivation is to figure out where my shortcomings. And then other people are telling me it's like we also got to look at the grand picture, right? Look at the other people putting in. Would you want to work for those people? And I'm like, well, that's not necessarily
It's a
the
great way to
nicest
frame
way
it.
to put it, but it's one of those things where you have to say you've got to really look if you really care about the department or the place you work for, like, and your coworkers, like you may have to step up even if you don't feel you're ready.
Oh yeah.
Not
We've all
saying
had
to
that.
prevent somebody else to get it, but to kind of give the chief a choice.
For the
Give him a
greater for the
choice.
greater good. Sometimes you
We've
gotta
all had that boss, and we're like, wow, I know I can do better than them. we've
Yeah.
all said that at least once in our life. Had a boss, and you're
Mhm.
like, "Wow, I can't believe that this is my boss." So
Yeah.
definitely doable. So
And
how do
that's
you guys feel about like external factors versus internal? Do you think one is weighs more than the other as far as reaching our goals?
I mean, I would have to say, I mean, it's going to depend on the external, like if
yeah.
somebody's got a gun to your head, like that's probably a little bit stronger than like an internal dialogue that's like, I should probably do this. So, I mean, if we're not going to the extremes of like life and death, then I would have to probably say internal. Because I think a lot of external things can influence you, but ultimately it still comes down to like, do you
You still have to make the
internally,
decision.
yeah, you make that decision. It ultimately will always come down to you are making that decision yourself. So I would say internal to just, I don't know, make it its most basic level.
I think
I
internally is where you're going to get the most of your negative feedback, just
That's true too.
because you are your own worst critic. But externally is where you're going to get most of your positive feedback.
true.
I think everyone has at least one person in their life, trying to push them forward and telling them, you could do this. You can be better at this. You could be so much better. And you don't always have that within yourself.
So that was perfect because I had just read this that Indy had brought forward and wrote down, and I was going to ask you about this because I know it could tie in that. So I'll just read the last sentence in this. This is from research by the Dominican University of California, and they found that people that regularly set and achieve goals have higher motivation, self-esteem, self-confidence, and autonomy. And I think that directly ties into when you realize how self-sufficient you actually can be. You get some
Yeah.
self-esteem, you get self-confidence because you realize that you can actually achieve things, you can do things, and that gives you the autonomy because now you're not dependent on everybody else to do everything for you. You can actually do it because you gain some self-esteem and you gain some self-confidence, which helps with that internal dialogue. It helps you to stop convincing yourself and talking yourself out of things if you just take that first step. I really believe like that's the hardest part for 90% of people.
I mean,
90% of people.
it is the other thing. There's everyone's different, right? Everyone's situation is different. There's this aspect of mental health that a lot of people have. I'm one of them. It's kind of a imposter syndrome ish, where it doesn't matter how much you achieve and how much you've done, or how well you've accomplished things. You won't admit it to yourself, and it makes it very hard to gain motivation, even when you've achieved victories, because in your own mind you've convinced yourself that it's not truly that if you were able to achieve it, it couldn't have been that hard, and I've dealt with that a lot. It's part of why I go to therapy, is like, you know it has helped me to realize that, like, I've done and achieved some pretty cool stuff that until recently I would not allow myself to get credit for. I think I said this in our intro episode. Like, I'm actually proud of who I am. I could not say that 6 months ago. 6 months ago, I thought I was a bum and I had not accomplished anything in life, which anyone outside of me would be like, "What are you talking about?
Yeah.
Like, look where you're at. Look at the things you've done. Like, I mean, you've had I personally, I feel like I've had a fairly interesting road to where I'm at. But you get this in your head, and anyone else could have done it, and they probably would have done it better, you know. And it's tough. It is tough, and it takes a lot to get through that. I don't know if it's something y'all have dealt with, or you feel like holds you back, but it's definitely something that I've had to get through. That is definitely affect how I set goals and achieve things for sure.
I think one of the key things you said there also was if you are facing those types of issues or those types of feelings internally, I would say itemize the things that you have done. Itemize the things that you've accomplished so you can see, hey, I've gotten here, I've gotten this, I've done this. There's so many great things that I've done, big or small. And looking back at that, it can help put things in the right perspective.
It could, if you're in the right space for that.
True.
The only thing that in my recommendation for people who that doesn't work and things like that is, again, to see a professional. If
Oh, of
my
course.
therapist wasn't as blunt and down to earth and like kind of in a similar field that I work in, it's just, I wouldn't be talking about this right now because I wouldn't feel this way. but he is very, very, very quick to call me on my bullshit. Like, just right to my face, like immediately. And sometimes that's what you need. You need someone that's just like, hey, everything you're saying is bullshit. You're lying to yourself. Part of it is fear, like, right? It's fear. It's that uncomfortable thing we talked about. If you accept that you've achieved these things and you're good at these things and you can do things, that gives you more reason and capability to push and do more stuff.
Yeah, it's almost
That's
like it adds this sense of responsibility. If you
yeah,
know that
you're
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 good at those things and that you can achieve those things, then it's like, crap, am I now held to that standard? And it's like,
yeah,
yeah, by
you try to shirk
yourself,
it.
as you
You
should
just
be.
you try to like kind of dust all that off you. Like, oh no, I can't do anything. Like I'm not good at anything. I'm not there's no reason to try because I'm not good. I've never achieved anything. But if you admit, oh yeah, I have achieved things and I can continue to achieve things, it's like, oh man, now I feel like I have a responsibility.
So, do you guys feel that you guys are going to set new goals? Do you guys have goals that you don't have set that you are currently working on?
Oh, I have tons of like little goals and things that I want to do. And similarly, I have gone through a lot of different ways of tracking them, from writing them down to having different task apps and habit trackers and things like that. I definitely go through phases, which isn't a good thing per se because it should last longer. But I have a habit of trying to build habits. And
I've done
so,
that.
yeah, so I download
Very
lots of
interesting.
trackers and things like that, and try to build things. And I feel like sometimes it comes back to the why. Like I'll be like, I want to read a chapter a day, and I'll do that for a while. But it's like, but why do I actually want to read a chapter a day? Is it because I just truthfully really want to do that, or is it because I saw some YouTube video that told me that I should read a chapter a day? Right? Because that's not a big enough
Yeah.
why. Some random person saying that isn't a big enough why. And a lot of people, we get in that trap of, we just look at some random motivational video and we use that to like stop us from actually doing things. Like that's our way of saying
Yeah.
we're progressing, we're trying by just
Yeah.
watching somebody else tell us how we should be trying. And we get
How
in the
reading a
cycle of it.
chapter a day changed my life for the better. And you're like, ah, well, then that'll work for me.
Yeah. And so you just
Yeah.
jump in and do it. So things like that. But to answer the question, yeah, there's, one that's been on my mind a lot lately has been the podcast. I've really been grinding for this, and I've set some internal goals for where I wanted to be. But again, I can't control everything when it comes to the outcome. So setting goals for myself of like, I want to get X number of teasers out per week. I want to make sure we get posts on TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, all these things, and a certain amount, a certain type of post. And I want to increase the quality of the post and the things that I'm making. So that's one. And I'm going to take the first step, I guess. Well, some of us have been open about things with mental health and stuff like that, but other things, getting into more taboo things. I want to watch way less porn. I think that that's been a problem. And so a goal that I have is to basically completely come off of it and not look at it at all anymore, and see how that impacts my life, because I think it'll have a great impact, because I think it's a really bad thing actually. And so I have the podcast, I have that. I always have things with my stream, but right now, to be frank, it's taken more of a backseat. I've been streaming less. I've been doing it because I have
I've noticed.
prioritize this a lot. I've been spending hours rewatching our videos and cutting out the bits and pieces and finding ways to improve it, which I do. Like that, it's both a pro and a con, because I go so deep into something that it's almost like I get really invested, which is good, but then I spent all my time doing it and I
You
really
become
focused in on it.
obsessive.
Yeah, and then when it doesn't work or whatever, again, if it takes a fallback, that hits me harder because I was so invested in it. Whereas it goes to kind of Chris's point, if he never gets invested, it doesn't hurt. If it fails, doesn't matter. Didn't do anything, right? Like that's the kind of mindset that, and I'm speaking for you, I guess. That might not be true, but that's kind of like the vibe that I get. Is like, if I don't put an effort, I don't whatever. If it doesn't work, then my hands are clean. I didn't take any hit for that. But I'm going off on tangents. I have a bunch of different goals, but I'll list them
Yeah,
forever.
if
So
I don't step on that first step, it can't break underneath me.
yeah,
There you go. So, do you have any
Uh,
goals, Chris, that you may have set internally that you
I
feel
think
comfortable sharing?
I think after tonight I'm gonna have a lot more.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I think I'm gonna
there's
start.
no way you just procrastinated the answering of the question about your goals. His response was, after tonight, I'll have
Oh
goals.
yeah, I have goals.
So many goals.
It all has to do with like future careers, stuff like that. But Nothing that I'm working on right at this moment. So
Hey, but acknowledging that you have them is a good first step, man. That you've got them, and then, like I said, start formulating ways to get there. So
Well, I think you're in a uniquely tricky position, and I think you know this. Most of us, the fields we ended up working in, we kind of just fell into over our lives at some point, right? Indy might, you started
yeah,
working where you work in, and then you just kind of went down this path and got to where you're at. Like I was looking for something that was military-ish, the military like, and I fell into the fire department. Just kind of like, okay, this works. I can be a blunt instrument. Like they would say, hey, go break these things, go do these things. I can do those things. I don't have to. It's not a very intellectual enterprise. I'm not the best at homework and doing things like that. When it comes to that stuff, I'm a terrible procrastinator. But Steven, even through like, just the gaming community and being competitive and all this stuff, it's kind of led him down this path. Yeah, he went to school not for those things, but it's something that was applicable, and it's still kind of this path that he, earlier on than the rest of us kind of got on, and is still kind of traveling along. And it's tough to be, and I should say, I have to imagine that it's tough to be at the a point later than what you feel like you should be in or should be at to be making these decisions. But at the same time, I would take encouragement in that because your maturity level is much higher. Like I'm really bad about this whole FOMO feeling, like feeling like, oh, I didn't do these things earlier in life. I didn't start early enough in this. I didn't do this, and I've messed up my life somehow by not doing that. But at the same time, realizing that if I had started and made those decisions at that early point in my life, I wouldn't have been ready for it. Where I could go back and if I had my, obviously the knowledge and maturity I have now, I could have done great things. But that's just not how life works.
oh, yeah.
I made poor decisions, and anything I got into that would have been different, I would have continued to make poor decisions, and that's just the way it is. You're not at that point. But in this unique position now, later on in life, where it's like I haven't really pigeonholed myself anywhere. Like the fire service is not all that applicable anywhere else. If I said I don't want to do this anymore, there's not a lot I can do. I'm kind of got to hit a reset button, and being in the position you are of being able to just say, "Hey, I want to try this thing or do this thing," and you can do that. You know?
I will add that you are never too late to do those things.
Oh, absolutely.
My parents met in the military. My mother went to civil service when she became pregnant with me. My dad continued to serve military and did his full 20 plus years, retired. Kind of like you said, after that, he was kind of, what do I do from here? So he took a little time and then he went back to school. And at, 40 plus years old, he went to school, got himself a degree, jumped back into civil service, took a pay cut, but then elevated himself past that point and just retired in the last year or so. So it's never too late. My mother, while raising two kids, went back to school, got herself a degree, and jumped into civil service at a higher level. So it's never too late. My brother
Right.
graduated from school with a degree in business admin. He did that for a very short time, realized he didn't like it. And then this is where brother and I differ. I struggle with a lot of self-discipline and resetting those goals or setting goals for myself. My brother, very motivated, and he's actually motivating me. He's already in the IT business. He picked up a book from Barnes and Noble, studied that thing front to back, went and passed a certification, has several certifications under his belt, and is earning six figures right now, doing well. So we get comfortable, but it's never too late to change. And we all get to a certain point in our life where we find that we need to move on or go do something different. I think I'm kind of at that crossroad now, but it's never too late. Never too late.
yeah, and see that's how I know that like my issues it's 99% mental, right? Cuz like just for example, I feel, at my age where I'm at, like I haven't achieved anything. I like to think of it like I feel like I'm a decent person, like I'm a good person, but I'm not good at being a person. Like I'm not good at existing as a human, if that makes sense.
Like in the way
I
of
understand.
going to work and doing the human things and
Yeah.
that sort of thing. Yeah.
You
Yeah,
definitely are
and
a
then
good person. I can tell you that.
well, I appreciate it. Yeah, it's I mean, I'll gladly go a lot more in depth with all that stuff on another episode because this is all going to directly tie into mental health. Yeah, it's just it's been a struggle for me for a long time, and it's you're going to see a pattern of this as well. I'm going to talk about my childhood a lot because that's that it's a big influence on who you grow up to be.
Oh
Mhm.
yeah.
So it's going to be a recurring pattern of childhood, mental health, not happy with where I am.
Yeah. So, I mean, with the childhood thing, I guess, and you kind of touched on it, and if I I don't think I was gonna say if it's too harsh, it's not the intention, but I don't even know if it will be. I guess that's just like a precursor in case is so like you said, you were kind of spoiled as a kid, and that has led to you having these resistances to being uncomfortable, and you were spoiled, and therefore things have always been handed to you, or you've had the easy path, and you've kind of been able to maintain that like up until this point. Now you're married, your wife makes a good amount of money, so you don't have to work right now and stuff like that. And even though you feel this sort of like pressure to do it, you still might not have that internal desire to actually go do these things because that's uncomfortable, and you are comfortable where you are at. Being able to stay at home and game and hang out with your buddies in Discord and like not have to do that is comfortable. But at some point, and maybe this is where the harshness comes out, you can't blame childhood and not change it, right? Like you can always look back and say, like, well, it's because of that. But
Which is
that part
important.
can't change. It's important to recognize it and to know that 100%.
Yeah.
But you can't change that part. What you can change is what you're doing right now. You can't change that. So, yes, that is probably what got you to the point you are, but it is not what's keeping you here. It's you that's keeping you here.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Is-
I'm fully aware of that. I just want to disclaimer: my parents were not bad parents.
Yeah.
They were good parents. They raised me well, and I do realize that I can't blame 30 years ago, 20 years ago on what I can and can't do today. I'm I fully realize that. It's just a hill that I
No,
need to
it's
get
tough.
past.
You just
like you
gotta
said, you
you gotta
spoke
make
on
them
the
comfortable.
like you said, spoke on it. It's the mental health part of it plays a big part, and we will go into that on another episode. I know it's going to be a very key episode, and I think you're going to definitely take the lead on that episode. But that mental block, it's different for different folks. There's a scale there. Some people it's just kind of like I just got to think about it. I'm going to do it, but I have not suffered with mental illness. I have not had any kind of depression or anything. My wife is kind of become the running joke around here because I'm one of the few people in our household who doesn't have that. So they're like, "Oh, here comes a normal guy. Here's happy brain." So that part of it's different. But my wife, she battles a little bit, and I do see that it can lead to certain parts of your life being kind of dropped off. And it's a battle that I'm learning, and I'm very interested in the mental health episode that we're gonna have due to that because I'm learning that now, and it can affect your drive, your motivation, your ambition.
Hmm.
So all of that ties in.
That
And like we
affects
said
everything.
before, we're our biggest advocate, we're our biggest, you know,
Critic.
critic. So the harsher you critic you are on yourself, the harder it is to take that first step.
Yeah.
All right, with that being said, what is one thing you can focus on for your goals right now? Your highest priority goal, what is one thing you can do right now to get you closer to that? It can be small, it can be big, it can be, hey, I'm going to start writing things down, whatever.
Yeah.
What is one thing that you think you can start doing?
Well, as far as priority, the highest priority for me should be my paramedic course. I am a medic, I'm just a lower level. It's a really weird system that only Virginia was still doing up until a year ago. I just don't have two more classes that paramedics have. But anyways, I'm in school to do that, and that should be what I should be talking about right now. But because I get obsessed with things, and right now the becoming a tactical medic is where that is. It is the actionable thing is actually pretty easy because in order to do that, I have to qualify on a couple different things. Uh, a physical test, an obstacle course, and weapons qualifications. So the actionable thing is just working on those things. Like as far as the PT test, the strength portion, all the push ups and bench press and all these things, like whatever. I could not practice them and I'd be fine. Running a mile and a half is not something Sean does. and I've been doing it. I've done it several times, and my time has increased. But my best time, which I said today, was 15 minutes and 20 seconds. If I want to ace it and get the high score, I need to do that in 10 minutes.
Wow.
Sean's not
Run
shaving
faster.
Yeah,
I,
Sean's not
I,
shaving 5 minutes off that, but
I,
we'll work on
I'll be at the 20-minute mark with that. So,
it. I was. I've been working. I've been shaving it down, and then the weapons qualification thing. It's I never grew up around guns, anything like that. I only started handling firearms in the past 2 years, thanks pandemic. So these are things that I want to improve and get better at. Now, the team will teach you these things. Like when you get on the teams, like you gain all this information, right? Obviously the physicality you have to bring to the table, but they'll train you up on the other stuff, the tactics and the special weapons and all that stuff. But I can still work on it and come to the table better prepared. And if I don't get it this time, then it's a better way to measure what I need to improve on. So that's kind of my priority against my wife's, wishes. She's not a big fan of me doing this, but she understands. I already
yes.
have a dangerous job, and now I'm like, hey, let me do another volunteer to do another dangerous thing. But she understands where I'm coming from. So that's the thing I've got. I've kind of prioritizing and very easy to set steps and goals for. So
Yeah, I'll be completely honest. I don't know what my priority goal is. What I'm going to do, I'm going to talk to my wife and figure it out.
your priority goal is setting a priority goal.
Hey, nothing wrong with that.
I'm gonna I'm gonna start small, take little steps, and hopefully, maybe this will finally be the year that I get out of my own head.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There you
I
go.
think one of the things there, and I don't know how much I necessarily fully believe in the like manifesting speaking things into, but like even with the way that you say it, maybe this will be the year, one foot out the door. It's not a maybe. This is the year. I'm going to, like we speak in ways that give us exits, right? Our words find us the ways that we can turn and go down a different path. And so when you say things like, maybe this is no mother effer, say this is the year, I'm gonna go make this happen. No
Oh
more of that,
shit!
maybe this, and I'm gonna, that could happen. Like, no,
We
because
should have
you're,
started this 6 months ago.
yeah,
A full year.
yeah.
I'm really
So,
cutting myself
All right.
short.
All right. So here we go. A year from today.
A
There
year
you go.
from today.
All right,
There you
let me
go.
mark my calendar.
within this
Ask Chris.
With,
time,
with, with,
Yeah.
Within the year of 2022.
yeah,
there you go.
that'll be something. There you go. And for me, so I've done some of these things in the past, and again, I've chosen to kind of and go down because I know when the mental health stuff comes up and when some other things come up, we'll get much more deep. But I feel like we have been more general, and so I'm gonna pick the porn one since it's gonna open up to the taboo and allow people who maybe are at home and have things that, again, one of the things we wanted to do with this show is to give people the opportunity to bring up things that they're uncomfortable talking about, and this is uncomfortable talking about watching too much porn with some dudes. It's a weird thing, right? Like knowing that 50, 100, who knows how many people are going to hear this is uncomfortable and it's awkward. But if I'm going to tell Chris to do uncomfortable things, I got to do it too. So I would say steps, and I've done this in the past, to failure has been deleting things that are the breaking points, the things that trigger that action of like, well, now I want to go look at this or now I whatever. So a lot of it's social media, those things, and
Yeah.
I'll delete them and get rid of things. I've added at times blockers to my browsers, to my phones, and things like that to try. And so doing those things, but also, I've never taken in a sticky note and put it right there on my monitor saying, like, hey, before, remember why, or think about so one of the things is looking to that bigger why, and it's like, how much better would your life be if you didn't do what you're about to do? And in my head,
Yeah.
I honestly believe my life would be monumentally better. I do. I think that in general, and again, we're gonna have probably a whole episode about porn and like the impact and stuff like that. I think that it is a massive detriment to men and maybe
Oh, for
women
sure.
and society in general right now. I think that it's actually a really, really bad thing. And I feel very strongly about that, for more reasons than one. Like, I think just in general, like, I think the idea of like, oh, sexual knowledge and all that sort of the things that people use to say that it's good, 10% good does not make up for 90% bad in my eyes. And so that is things like that. And so an actual step I think will be that I'm going to have post-it note. I'm going to have one that literally I place on my monitors that tells me like, think about how much better your life would be. Cause that's the kind of thing you want to shoot for is I want a better life. So reminding
Yeah.
myself of that instead of little stuff like just don't do it right now, man. Like that's not going to have the same impact as like what would your life be like if you stopped. Same thing with smoking, right? You don't want to quit smoking, you want a better life. So how much better would my life be if I quit smoking? You know,
For
those
sure.
sorts of things are just things that I've heard in fancy YouTube videos. So
One of
Well,
those guys.
yeah.
that did work for me and drinking. So
Mhm.
I used to smoke marijuana back in the day. Oh, a little
Oh.
taboo, a little taboo.
Oh, our
That's
Um,
system.
illegal.
We got them.
Not
FBI's
anymore.
right here. CIA's right here.
oh, they trust me, they already know. But one of the things that I had to once I quit smoking, that void and that addiction gap was there, and alcohol fit that. It was legal,
Mhm.
and started doing that. So one of the things I had to look at, going back to what you're saying, I had to focus on how my life would be better without it, and what is it doing to myself, my family, those types of things. So I was able to kind of cut it out with that. Like I said, it wasn't a very heavy dependence. I wasn't going around and drinking and driving, or I wasn't anywhere near off the deep end with it, but
Mhm.
I knew it was affecting me in a way that I didn't feel comfortable. And spending money on things like that, man, it's just you are literally sending money down the drain. It's in one
Yeah.
hole, out the other. It's down the toilet, and you look back at your wallet and go, "Where did my money go?"
That's one
So
benefit of
Yeah.
having never drank or smoked or anything like that. And also, I don't spend money
Save
on
money.
any of the
Oh, you're
stuff.
stingy.
So,
yeah,
with that said, like at least I don't blow money on any sort of addictions.
You know,
you
and I
know?
wanted to say it's funny that that Mr. Happy Brain over there, supposedly is talking about like I was very uncomfortable with like my drinking. It's like,
there
oh,
you go.
okay, but you've got a healthy brain, sure.
That's it. We're all a
Nobody's
little
perfect.
twisted.
Yeah,
Comparatively happy brain.
yeah. It's everybody's got
Everyone's
their
got their
own
thing.
quirks and things in their heads.
There
It's
you
just
go.
a matter of what they are, and
Hey,
you know,
but that's gone. Yeah,
yeah.
He's like, no,
There you go.
I'm perfect now.
Yeah, he
I'm
was
good.
sad brain. Now he's happy brain.
Yeah, it's been
Well, my wife has
optimized.
told me that I've replaced that with peanut butter and jelly because I have to have a peanut butter and jelly now, and I love a peanut butter and jelly sandwich.
Honestly, like I think
There's-
that's a big win. Like I'm pretty sure that's a big win. Like
I don't know, man. I'm pretty sure you can get peanut butter flavored vodka, and you can.
you're not helping, Chris. Don't crack the bottle, dude. That's it.
Oh yeah. But for me, and a goal, again, going back to career, baby on the way. As you can see, that is a big motivation factor for me
Mhm.
and my drive and my why. And getting the career going in the next path is for me. So trying to find a course on Thomas Nelson or any other college that I can find is going to be my actionable goal. Finding a course that I can enroll in, get going. Being uncomfortable was always the thing. I failed that pass certification. It was a big roadblock, pushed me back. Going forward, I talked to my wife about this actually right before this podcast, and I was reading her some of the facts about women in college and school and education. And as you spoke about, some of our wives here, educated, good to go. They're already going down that path. And I told her I was going to wait till after the baby to start looking at that. And she said, "Why? Is
Mhm.
that just another excuse?"
Yeah.
yeah.
And I was that, ooh, a little jab. Ooh,
Mhm.
got him in the
Like,
ribs. And I
like
was
this
like,
is this is why I married you.
that's it. I was like,
Call
I
me on my
can't use that as an
BS.
excuse.
Yeah.
So she's
Like I,
schooling while pregnant. Why can't I school without carrying a child?
yeah.
Mhm.
So
It's like I
there's
said
no
earlier,
excuse.
you need someone to call you on your bullshit.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes. So that is my actionable researching colleges so I can get enrolled.
Yeah, I'll tell you, there's no one that can make me feel as small, but still make me feel like the most important person in the world than my wife.
There you go. They're there for a reason, man. We chose right. Or should I say they chose right? I don't know how we go with that.
Yeah, no,
They chose
I don't know,
projects. I don't
man. I was
she
gonna say,
fucked up.
yeah, our wives chose projects, so here we are.
I tell people at work all the time. It's like, bro, I lucked out. My wife gets out of school. Y'all better not piss me off. It'll be real easy to step away from this.
All right, so we can set an actionable goal for all of our listeners out there. Go and follow us on all of our social media
Oh, here we
platforms.
go. Yes, I
Yep,
love
we
this
are on
part.
BeHonestMan.com.
.com. That's right.
Go check
Check
it
it
out.
out. All of our socials are there. You can also find all of our podcast episodes, as well as all the platforms, direct links to the platforms, so you don't have to go searching for us. And while you're there, if you decide that you want to leave a review or something of the like, please feel free. Let us know what your thoughts are. You can also leave a comment on our website. You can also ask us questions on our
Yeah, do it.
website. So feel free to do that, and we may just touch on them in another episode. So right at the bottom of the page, there is a form where you can leave a comment or ask a question. Feel free to do that. And that wraps up this one. So let's talk about what the next episode is. Who wants to let the folks at home know what we'll be talking about in episode 3?
Episode 3. So we're gonna be talking about aging and maturing as men. And now that we're all pushing our 30s, 40s, it starts to feel more real. And we're gonna talk
yeah,
about
boys.
how we feel.
Yeah.
I hurt all the time.
Me too,
Everything
man.
hurts.
Me
Save
too.
it for next week. I don't necessarily hurt, but we'll talk about those things next week. Y'all take better care of yourselves. All right.
Everyone.
Yeah.
That is it for this week. Thank you guys for tuning in. Really appreciate it. And we will catch you next time. As always, be honest, man.